I was serving tea in my favorite white porcelain when I realized how that simple ritual had transformed my morning. 10 years ago, I would have been running around the house, dropping things, searching for keys under piles of objects, while gulping down bitter coffee standing up. Perhaps this is your reality now. If you are watching this video, something in your life is asking for silence. If you liked what you have seen so far, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Each new subscriber is received with the same attention I dedicate to the arrangement of objects in my home. Yesterday, I received a message from a viewer who said, "Naomi, since I started applying minimalism, I sleep more deeply. I did not know that anxiety could live in closets." That phrase touched me. Anxiety really does live in closets, in cluttered drawers, in postponed decisions, in impulsive purchases, in the overloaded schedule. During the 10 years I lived in Japan, I learned that true sophistication is not in excess, but in careful selection. The Japanese have a proverb, "Emptiness is more valuable than fullness," because it contains the possible. When we eliminate what does not serve, we create space for what truly matters. Let us examine the silently toxic habits that, like discreet thieves, steal our daily peace, and how Japanese minimalism offers a more serene and intentional alternative. 1. Starting the day without intention. Perhaps the most insidious of modern habits is waking up and immediately reaching for your cell phone. Your first contact with the world should not be a blue screen and notifications from strangers. I remember visiting a friend in New York. Her apartment was impeccably decorated. Original paintings, designer furniture, perfect lighting. It had everything that decoration magazines celebrate. However, her morning ritual was chaotic. She scrolled through the newsfeed still in bed, answered emails in the bathroom, listened to podcasts in the shower, checked market trends while brushing her teeth. By the time she reached the kitchen, she was already mentally exhausted, and the day had barely begun. "Naomi, I cannot function without being connected," she confessed to me while frantically searching for the cell phone she had left somewhere in the house. "I feel like I will miss something important." What we are really missing is contact with ourselves. Japanese minimalism suggests a different awakening. In Kyoto, I learned the practice of ichigo ichi, one moment, one encounter. Each morning is unique and will never repeat itself. Instead of delivering your first thoughts to the digital world, reserve the first minutes for yourself. A green tea prepared with attention. A window opened to feel the air. 3 deep breaths. When I lived in Kyoto, my neighbor, a 78-year-old lady, woke up every day at 5 in the morning to carefully sweep the entrance of her home, not out of obligation, but as a ritual to welcome the new day. "The beginning determines the rest," she would say, straightening the small flower arrangement at the entrance. This small ritual creates a protective barrier around your energy. Your day does not begin by reacting, but by choosing. It is a silent luxury that everyone can have, regardless of their bank account. Think about how different it would be to start the day with 5 minutes just for yourself before the demands of the world. A cup of hot tea held with both hands. The sound of boiling water, the texture of porcelain, the soft aroma. In this small ritual, you recalibrate your senses and establish an intention for the next hours. It does not need to be elaborate. My morning routine takes only 15 minutes, but it completely transforms my mental state. A brief moment of seated meditation, a small excerpt of poetry, a cup of green tea, a list with only 3 priorities for the day, not 20. The first step toward a more intentional awakening is simple. Put your cell phone to charge away from the bed. This small habit change already creates space for a new morning ritual more aligned with Japanese minimalism. 2. Accumulating, just in case. The second toxic habit is accumulating objects, just in case. That dress bought 3 years ago, that you never wore. But what if you need it? The 20 almost identical pairs of shoes. The 15 mugs when you live alone. This habit is particularly perverse because it disguises itself as prudence. "I am just preparing," we say. But the truth is that we are feeding a deep insecurity, the feeling that we will never have enough. I was invited to dinner at the home of a successful executive in Boston. Her residence was spacious, in an exclusive neighborhood. But when I asked to use the guest bathroom, she became visibly uncomfortable. "Oh, that one is occupied," she said. Later, I discovered that occupied meant completely taken over by boxes of products I bought and never used. And an entire room of her mansion was unusable, sacrificed at the altar of what if someday. She confided in me after a few glasses of wine. "I grew up without much money. Now that I can buy, it is hard to stop." What began as compensation for a childhood of scarcity transformed into a new form of poverty. The inability to enjoy the space, to breathe freely in her own home. Japanese minimalism teaches us about mottainai, the recognition of the intrinsic value of things. When we keep unused objects, we prevent them from fulfilling their purpose. A never-worn dress is not fulfilling its function. 20 identical pairs of shoes dilute the value of each one. During my years in Tokyo, I met a carpenter who created beautiful furniture from reclaimed wood. He treated each board with reverence, as if conversing with it to discover what it wanted to become. "Wood stored without purpose is sad wood," he would say. "Things want to be useful or beautiful, preferably both." Start by asking, "If I were buying this today, would I buy it?" If the answer is no, perhaps it is time to release that object to fulfill its purpose somewhere else. Choose a small category to begin: scarves, bags, beauty products. Remove everything. Examine each item with honesty. Which ones do you really use and appreciate? Which ones are you keeping out of fear or guilt? Release what does not serve, with gratitude for what it has already provided, even if it was just a lesson about more conscious choices. A client of mine reduced her wardrobe from 278 pieces to 43. "Now, I love each piece I have," she told me. And surprisingly, I seem to have more options, not fewer. 3. Confusing occupation with productivity. When I moved back to the United States, I was impressed by the cult of busyness. "I am so busy" has become almost a badge of honor, proof of importance. In Washington, D.C., I observed how this habit reached almost pathological levels. Executives proudly display their impossible schedules. Meetings scheduled every half hour, working lunches, calls during commutes, as if a person's value could be measured by the scarcity of their free time. I attended a corporate lunch where a woman arrived breathless, disheveled hair, schedule overflowing with commitments. "I do not have a free minute," she announced as if sharing an achievement. Everyone nodded in approval, except the CEO, a 60-year-old lady with a serene presence. "I am never busy," she said calmly. "Busyness is a lack of priorities." The silence that followed was revealing. Japanese culture has a valuable concept called yutori: mental space, margin, slack. A schedule without yutori is like a text without paragraphs. Tiring, illegible, devoid of rhythm. Japanese minimalism teaches us about negative space, interval, intentional pause. Zen gardens are not beautiful despite the empty spaces, but because of them. Authentic productivity does not come from the quantity of tasks, but from the quality of attention. One of the most successful CEOs I worked with maintained an unusual habit: 2 hours daily completely blocked in his schedule. No meetings, no calls, no emails. "This is my time to think," he explained. "The best decisions emerge from silence, not from noise." Try this exercise. Keep a record of how you spend your time for 3 days. Then mark each activity as essential, pleasant, or unnecessary. Unnecessary activities are those you do out of habit, social obligation, or to avoid something more important. Eliminate one per week. Intentionally create empty spaces in your schedule. Start small, 30 minutes 3 times a week. Protect that time as you would protect a crucial meeting, because it is, in fact, a crucial meeting with yourself. A client of mine, executive director of a technology company, implemented Minimal Wednesdays, 1 day a week with only 3 essential commitments. The result? "My Wednesdays generate more value for the company than the other 4 days combined," she reported, surprised. 4. Tolerating visually chaotic environments. A few years ago, I was invited for tea at the home of a socialite in Chicago. The apartment had a view of the lake and expensive works of art. But there were so many objects, so many patterns, colors, and textures competing for attention that I left with a headache. "How do you manage to think here?" I asked. She laughed. I take my anxiety medication in a double dose when I am at home." That confession marked me. Her home, supposedly a refuge, was actually a source of stress. Every surface was covered, too many pillows on the sofa, 15 decorative items on the coffee table, 3 overlapping rugs. The space screamed for attention without allowing the eye to rest anywhere. Visual chaos is not just an aesthetic issue, it is a constant drain of mental energy. Your brain is continuously processing each object in your field of vision, even when you do not notice. Neuroscientists call this cognitive load. When your visual environment is overloaded, a significant part of your mental capacity is occupied, just processing the space around you, leaving fewer resources for clear thinking, creativity, or simply inner peace. Japanese minimalism is not about living in a sterile space, but about intentional curation. In a traditional Japanese house, each object is chosen with purpose. The seasons of the year are reflected in small changes: a leaf arrangement in autumn, a single cherry branch in spring. The concept of tokonoma, a display niche built into the wall, perfectly exemplifies this approach. In this small space, only 1 or 2 items are displayed at a time. A simple floral arrangement, a calligraphic scroll. Beauty comes not from quantity, but from the focused attention we can give to a few carefully selected elements. Start with 1 surface, a table, a dresser. Remove everything. Clean completely. Now, return only the items that are functional or genuinely beautiful, not cute, not they will do, but truly meaningful. The space between objects is not empty. It is breath for your home. An interior designer I worked with in San Francisco has a practical rule. For each item you add, remove 2. This keeps the space in constant evolution, but never overloaded. I remember the home of a tea ceremony teacher in Kyoto. What impressed me most was not the objects present, but the deliberate absence. Each item seemed to have been carefully considered. Natural light could flow freely. The gaze was allowed to rest. The visual silence created space for presence. 5. Filling silence with noise. In 2019, I spent a week at a Zen monastery in Kamakura. On the 3rd day, I realized something disturbing. I could no longer stay in silence. My mind constantly sought stimuli: music, podcasts, news. Silence had become uncomfortable. The head monk noticed my discomfort during morning meditation. "Many people from the West are afraid of silence," he observed. "You fill each moment with sound, as if silence were an enemy to be fought." This is one of the most toxic habits of modern life, filling every moment with noise. We drive while listening to podcasts. We cook with the TV on. We run with music in our ears. We fear silence because in it we can hear our own thoughts. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote, "All of man's misfortune derives from a single cause, his inability to sit quietly in a room." Centuries later, that observation remains painfully relevant. A client came to me desperate. "I cannot sleep without the TV on. Silence distresses me." We worked for months to reintroduce moments of silence into her life. First 5 minutes, daily, then 10. Today, she says that silence is her most precious luxury. Japanese minimalism celebrates seijaku, serene tranquility. In a world that values the loud, the flashy, and the incessant, cultivating moments of silence is revolutionary. It is in silence that we find our own voice, our true needs. Japanese gardens are designed precisely to cultivate this inner silence. Carefully positioned stones, water flowing gently, moss growing slowly. Nothing competes for attention. Everything invites contemplation. Try this: a lunch without music or television, a bath without a podcast, a walk without headphones. Observe the initial discomfort and how gradually your mind calms down. An executive I worked with implemented analog Sundays, 24 hours without electronic devices. without digital music, without screens. The first weeks were distressing, she admitted. Now it is the day I most look forward to. My mind finally slows down. Silence is not the absence of something, but the presence of space. Space for reflection, for intuition, for the softness of existence itself. Perhaps the true luxury of the 21st century is not a bigger house or a faster car, but moments of genuine silence. 6. Prioritizing quantity over quality. When I lived in Japan, I attended a ceramics course. I spent 3 months making the same cup repeatedly. The master, an 80-year-old gentleman, would say, "When you make 100 identical cups, perhaps you will begin to understand what a cup is." In the West, I would have made 100 different cups in the first month. This obsession with quantity manifests in all aspects. We want more clothes, more experiences, more successes, more followers. But quantity often dilutes quality. In San Francisco, I met an award-winning chef who served the same menu for 2 years. While other restaurants constantly changed to attract more customers, she perfected each element of her 6 dishes. The miso soup she offered had only 5 ingredients, but each one was selected with extraordinary care, prepared with impeccable technique. People confuse variety with quality, she explained to me as we tasted her seemingly simple soup, but with complex and deep flavor. I prefer to do one thing extraordinarily well than to do 20 things mediocrely. A well-known influencer confided in me. I have 500,000 followers and not a single friend with whom I can cry at 3 in the morning. She had prioritized the quantity of connections over their quality. Japanese minimalism teaches us about kaizen, continuous improvement. It is preferable to do one thing with excellence than 10 things halfway. It is better to have 5 perfect pieces of clothing than 50 mediocre ones. It is more valuable to cultivate 3 deep friendships than to accumulate hundreds of acquaintances. The Japanese concept of shokunin, master craftsman dedicated to the perfection of his art, exemplifies this approach. A shokunin spends decades refining a single skill, seeking excellence through deliberate repetition and meticulous attention to detail. I visited the studio of an ikebana, Japanese floral arrangement master in Tokyo. While I expected to see dozens of elaborate arrangements, I found only one: 3 simple stems in a rustic vase. I have been working on this arrangement for 2 weeks, he explained. It is not ready yet. This week, identify an area where you have prioritized quantity. It could be clothes, social commitments, simultaneous projects. Reduce by half. Observe how quality naturally rises when you concentrate. Your energy. My friend Yumiko, a jewelry designer, reduced her annual collection from 60 pieces to just 12, 1 per month. Now, each piece tells a complete story, she said. And my sales have tripled, even offering fewer options. Less, but better. This could be the motto of Japanese minimalism applied to all aspects of life. 7. Living in sensory excess. Once, I visited a shopping mall in Dubai. The lights were intense, the music loud, artificial aromas overwhelmed the senses. After 2 hours, I realized I had bought things I did not even want. The sensory excess had compromised my decision-making ability. This is not an accident. Commercial environments are deliberately designed to overload our senses, reducing our ability to make conscious choices and increasing impulsive purchases. We live in a constant sensory bombardment. Notifications, advertisements, sounds, colors, artificial smells. Our senses, developed for the subtlety of nature, are in permanent overload. A marketing executive sought me out with complaints of insomnia and anxiety. When visiting her apartment, I noticed colored LED lights, 3 aroma diffusers, television on 24 hours, air conditioning at maximum. Her senses never rested. We worked together to create sensory zones in her home. The bedroom became a sanctuary of low stimulation, neutral colors, no electronic devices, soft lighting, natural temperature. Her office, on the other hand, remained vibrant and energetic. It is as if my brain could finally breathe, she reported after a few weeks. I did not realize how constantly overloaded I was. Japanese minimalism cultivates miyabi, the appreciation of subtle elegance. Colors are soft and natural. Aromas are light. Sounds are purposeful. This is not just an aesthetic choice. It is a physiological necessity. Our nervous system needs breaks. In a traditional Japanese house, sensory elements are carefully curated. Natural wood instead of synthetic materials. Light filtered through washi paper doors. The soft sound of water. Each sensory element is considered not in isolation, but as part of a harmonic composition. Unlike sensory deprivation, Japanese minimalism seeks sensory richness through subtlety. It is like the difference between hearing an entire orchestra, playing fortissimo continuously, or appreciating the delicate solo of a single cello. The second experience can be much richer precisely because of its restraint. Begin a sensory detox in your bedroom. Neutral colors, natural aromas, or none, silence. Transform at least this space into a refuge for your senses. You will notice the difference in the quality of your sleep and, consequently, in the mental clarity of the following day. An architect I collaborated with in New York redesigned her home following this principle. Before, each room tried to shout louder than the previous one, she explained. Now, each space has its own sensory personality. The bathroom is fresh and soft. The kitchen is aromatic and tactile. The bedroom is silent and welcoming. 8. Accumulating emotional pending matters. Houses are not the only spaces we accumulate. We also clutter our emotional life, unresolved resentments, postponed conversations, ungiven forgiveness, abandoned dreams. This is perhaps the most subtle and profound of toxic habits, and the most difficult to identify precisely because it is not visible like a pile of unworn clothes or an overloaded schedule. I met a lady in Tokyo who practiced usuji, the great cleaning, not only in her house, but in her emotional life. Each December, she wrote letters to resolve pending matters. Apologies, thanks, closures. One cannot receive the new year with a cluttered heart, she would say. When I asked about the impact of this practice, she pointed to her serene face. 78 years, just a few wrinkles. Resentment is what ages a person the most. Japanese minimalism teaches us about kokoro, the unity between heart, mind, and spirit. When our emotional space is overloaded, our mental and spiritual clarity also suffers. A therapist friend in Kyoto explained to me that, in traditional Japanese psychology, emotions are not seen as something to be processed or overcome, but as visitors to be received, acknowledged, and released. The problem is not difficult, emotions, he would say, but our tendency to lock them inside us, like objects we cannot throw away. Do your own emotional usuji. Identify 3 pending matters that weigh on your heart: an ungiven forgiveness, an unexpressed vulnerability, an unestablished boundary. Choose one to resolve this week, not through grand dramatic gestures, but with the sincere simplicity that minimalism inspires. A client implemented a simplified version of this practice. Every Sunday, she sets aside 30 minutes to write a letter, to be sent or not. Sometimes the recipient is someone who hurt me. Other times, it is myself, forgiving myself for a mistake. Occasionally, it is someone I never properly thanked. In a few months, she reported a sensation of lightness she had not experienced in years. It is like cleaning the emotional basement I had been ignoring, she described. Each letter is like removing a heavy object that I did not even realize I was carrying. Emotional space, like physical space, deserves to be treated with the same intention and care. Emotional accumulation not only occupies inner space, but also drains energy that could be directed toward the present. 9. Allowing low-quality relationships. During my rebellious adolescence, my grandmother would say, "Naomi, you are the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time." I ignored it for years, only to later discover she was right. One of the most minimalist and courageous decisions we can make is to curate our social circle. Low-quality relationships, those that drain our energy, diminish our self-esteem, awaken our worst, occupy precious emotional space. In Boston, I attended a social event where a woman was visibly uncomfortable in the presence of another guest. Later, she explained to me, "That person constantly diminishes me with subtle comments. I always leave our encounters feeling inadequate. When I asked why she continued to attend events where this person would be present, she seemed surprised. I never considered that I could choose. We have been part of the same social circle for decades. I observed a remarkable transformation in this same friend after she distanced herself from that toxic social group. "It is as if I had more air to breathe," she said. "I did not know that friendships could be light." Japanese minimalism practices the concept of N, connection, relationship, destiny. Not all relationships are meant to last forever. Some are seasonal. Honoring the natural cycle of relationships is wisdom, not coldness. The Japanese poet Matsuo Basho wrote, "Each day is a journey, and the journey itself is our home." This perspective reminds us that relationships are also journeys. Some are long, others brief. Some are deep, others superficial. Maturity lies in recognizing the nature of each connection and honoring it appropriately. Evaluate your relationships with the same honesty you would apply to your wardrobe. Does this relationship serve me? Does it bring beauty to my life? If the answer is no, perhaps it is time to practice compassionate distancing. A client of mine, a finance executive, implemented a practice she called social energy inventory. She mapped all her regular relationships, evaluating how she felt before, during, and after each interaction. The result was revealing. Certain colleagues and even family members consistently appeared as energy drains. It was painful to recognize that some relationships I considered important were, in fact, significantly harmful, she shared. Gradually, she began to redefine boundaries, limiting time with people who consistently left her exhausted or diminished. The result was an apparently reduced social life, but emotionally much richer. "I prefer 5 friends who fill my spirit to 50 who empty it," she concluded. 10. Ignoring the power of daily rituals. Finally, perhaps the most silently toxic habit is living without rituals. When each day is just a random sequence of tasks, we lose the chance to infuse meaning into the everyday. I visited a friend in Seattle recently. She did not understand why she felt permanently exhausted, despite her comfortable life. Observing her routine, I noticed she had no rituals. She woke up at different times. She ate standing up, often skipping meals. She slept when her body gave up. "It is as if I am always putting out fires," she confessed. "I react instead of creating." Japanese minimalism is rich in rituals. The tea ceremony, the ikebana flower arrangement, the ofuro evening bath. These are not superfluous luxuries. They are anchors for the mind, landmarks that transform amorphous time into meaningful moments. I participated in a traditional tea ceremony in Uji, conducted by a 15th-generation master. Each movement was precise, each object carefully positioned. "The tea ceremony is not about tea," she explained. "It is about creating a perfect moment and the awareness of its impermanence. This is the essence of ritual, not rigidity, but total attention, a common moment elevated through awareness." When my Japanese grandmother washed rice for dinner, she transformed this simple task into a meditation. Her hands moved the grains under the water with the same concentration as a Zen monk. "Wash the rice as if you were washing your mind," she would say. "Create small daily rituals, a breakfast at the table without screens, a 10-minute walk after lunch, a gratitude ritual before sleeping. They do not need to be elaborate. The beauty lies in intentional repetition." A Japanese architect I worked with divided her day into seasons, each with its own mini-transition ritual. Between work and family dinner, she would sit for 5 minutes in her garden, observing the changes in the plants. "This small moment of pause allows me to be truly present for my family," she explained. "Without it, I would bring my work to the dinner table, not physically, but in my mind." By incorporating simple rituals, we create landmarks that give shape and meaning to the day. It is not just a matter of time management, but of time creation, moments of full awareness amid the constant flow of life. An executive implemented a first sip ritual in the morning, sitting for 1 complete minute before taking the first sip of coffee or tea. "It seems ridiculously simple," he admitted, But this single minute of complete attention daily changed how I experienced the rest of the day. The power of rituals does not lie in their complexity, but in their consistency. Like the practice of shodo, Japanese calligraphy, where the same character is written thousands of times, the daily repetition of simple gestures eventually transcends the mechanical and becomes deeply meaningful. Japanese minimalism teaches us that true abundance does not come from having more, but from needing less. It is not about deprivation, but about curation. Not coldness, but clarity. When we remove excess of objects, commitments, distractions, we discover what truly matters. As a Zen proverb says, "When the branches are pruned, the flowers bloom." If this video brought some clarity to your life, consider subscribing to the channel. Each new video is created with the same intention I apply to my home. Only the essential, always the beautiful. Leave in the comments which of these toxic habits you recognized in your life, and which minimalist change you are willing to try. As the Japanese concept of Kaizen says, small changes, great transformations. Simplicity is clarity. Comment if you agree.